Well, good morning, everyone. I hope everybody got here safe and sound. And we are going to start to respect everybody's schedules. First of all, we want to thank you for being here and for choosing to be with us today. Welcome to our panel, Be a Leader Who Strives for Excellence. I'm excited to kick off this panel. My name is Dr. Jeannie Barrow, and my purpose is to realize my full potential and to populate the world with great leaders. I spent over 20 years as a leader in technology and financial services, and today I am the CEO and founder of Fearless Women at Work and Executive Bound, and it is our privilege to be with you today. Before we get started, here are a few housekeeping items. The first is that the bios of all the panelists is going to be available in the speaker section in the event webpage. At the end of the panel, we have left about 15 minutes so that any questions that you have throughout our discussion, we will do our best to address them. And we are also going to be recording this session. So if for any reason you have any technology problems, don't worry, we will be able to get you the recording once we are wrapped up. And finally, remember to use hashtag NJWomen to keep the conversation going on social media. So without further ado, it's my pleasure to introduce our panel. And as I call your name, please take about 30 seconds to introduce yourselves. And let's start with Lori Roth.
Hi, everybody. Thanks again. Thanks for being here. It's really my pleasure to be a part of this great panel. We've had fun getting ready for it. My name is Lori Roth. I'm the National Managing Partner for Prager Metis. We're a CPA and advisory firm with 16 offices throughout the country and the world. And my role as the National Managing Partner is to create, develop, and support leaders. So I'm really happy to be part of this panel.
Thank you, Lori. And Lisa Nelson.
Hi, everybody. Welcome. I'm Lisa Nelson. I'm the Executive Director of U.S. Public Policy for Bristol Myers Squibb. So thrilled to be with you today. I lead a team of policy experts who help guide the company through the difficult policy and public affairs environment that we're in right now, shape the company's positioning on really critical issues to our business, and look forward to being a part of this robust discussion.
Thank you, Lisa. And Judy Saylor.
Hi, everyone. My name is Judy Saylor. I'm an HR specialist with Prime Point. I have had 32 years of leadership development and staff development work that I have done. And I'm very proud of the fact that this group has been a wonderful team to work with. And NJBIA has done an excellent job bringing us all together.
Thank you, Judy. And I can definitely second that. We've had a blast putting this together for you. We're excited to bring you these questions and the answers that we have for you. And throughout the entire presentation, I want you to first think about what is my purpose for being here today. So think about that for yourself. What do I want to get out of this session? Write it down, take out your notebooks, take notes, because hopefully we'll share some golden nuggets that you'll be able to take back with you and execute on, as you will hear from us. We have taken this topic of being a leader who strives for excellence, and we created 4 major categories that we're going to address. The first one is organizational and personal well-being and engagement. The second category is productivity and goal setting. The third one is creative thinking and continuous improvement. And last, none of this will matter if all we do is just have a conversation. So we want you to walk away with tools and tangible takeaways that you can execute and implement in your business and in your career. So with that, we're going to start with the first topic, organizational and personal well-being and engagement. And the question that I have for the panel is, what's most critical to improve your organizational and personal well-being and enhancing engagement? Who wants to start? Lisa?
I'll start, Jenny. Yeah, I think that it's hard, obviously, to look at that question not in the lens of the pandemic. All of our personal well-being has changed so dramatically, and the way we interact with each other has changed so dramatically over the last 6 months. I think for me and my small team of 6, it's really been about leading with empathy and being intentional about understanding the things that are happening in people's lives that are directly impacting their work, and sometimes are even visible to us all now in a way that they weren't before. So for me, it's really been about being intentional about having those conversations. What is it that's impacting your work? My team is interestingly diverse in terms of where people are in their lives. Some of us at home managing young children, some people alone in New York City at the height of the pandemic, some people married to healthcare workers. I have all of those things, a mix of all of those things on my team. And so I pride myself on being a leader who has a high EQ, but it's much harder to do that. We have to be honest that it's harder to do that in a virtual environment. And those conversations that would happen very naturally don't happen naturally over video. And so I've really tried to at each opportunity do that check-in with people, understand what's happening in their life, and really, frankly, try to give them tools to say, you know, when I can, here's how you might manage that distraction, or here's how you can cut yourself a break in order, because of what's happening in your life, in order to be able to focus on your work. So really allowing them to have the space and have the comfort to have those intentional conversations with me in order to be more productive.
Yeah, I think all those things are important, Lisa. I think also that, you know, staying connected and being a good leader through difficult times is really important. And I think that helping the people around you to be the best that they can be is a sign of a true leader. So, and as we're really trying to strive for excellence in leadership, I think we really need to be attuned to everybody's situation, challenges, and the way things have changed for people as well, right? So how do we do that in an environment like this, and staying connected when you're not meeting at the water cooler or the coffee pot, right? So I think that we have to be a little bit more creative and make sure that we schedule time for those check-ins, and realize that everybody might fall in a different demographic, and what works for one person isn't necessarily going to work for another. As you said, some are at home with young children, some are alone, which brings its own challenges. But I think that as leaders, we need to continue to change our perspective to be able to help the people around us to be the best that they can be.
Thank you, Lori.
And I have to agree with you both. I think that, you know, great leaders are leaderful. You know, they're great to their team, they're empathetic, they work to connect with them. And at the same time, you really have to have compassion for yourself. Many of us are working full time. Many of us just became part-time school teachers. Many of us could be caring for elderly parents. You've got 600 things on your plate, and here comes a pandemic. Know that you need to give yourself a break every once in a while, and sometimes check in with yourself. It is your team, and great teams support each other, not just the leaders supporting them.
Yeah, Judy, thank you. And from my perspective, I agree with what everybody mentioned, you know, leading with empathy, connecting, giving yourself a break. And I believe that a lot of what we need to do as leaders today is we need to also put the oxygen mask on ourselves, because if we don't have the strength, if we don't have if we're not centered and grounded as leaders, it's going to be very difficult for us to guide our teams, guide our families in a way that brings them peace and harmony. So there's a couple of things that I can talk about there, which is, one is make sure you create a daily practice that's going to support you in a daily basis. For example, I do my meditations in the morning. I work out from home via Zoom with my team at the gym, and I take walks throughout the day so that I'm not strapped to my desk, and I'm able to move the energy in my body so that I can show up to meetings and I'm not dragging myself to those meetings. On the other hand, when it comes to extending that to then your teams, I think this is a perfect time to begin to look at how do I connect with the people that I'm leading, and perhaps even consider mentoring some of them, which kind of ties what everybody talked about, connecting and helping other people rise and elevate them, one of the best ways that I know to do that is by mentoring the people that are around me and mentoring my team and coaching them through the difficult times by listening and by knowing, by having that empathy, right, to extend them that what is their perspective versus mine. So that's what I would say in terms of what is most critical to improve your organizational, personal well-being and enhancing engagement. So please post any questions that you have based on our answers to the questions in our little chat there on the right-hand side. And let's move on to the second question around productivity and goal setting. And this is huge for us, right? This is a time when we had our plan for many of us, our business plans, our personal plans, and then everything got thrown out. So we've been using the word pivot a lot. So we need to pivot and we need to shift whatever we were doing to the next normal, the new normal, whatever people are calling it. And so when it comes to productivity and goal setting, what I want to ask the panel is, what do you recommend we don't do to be more productive as we set business and personal goals? Whoever wants to start.
So I think it's really important, a lot of the things that we said earlier about remembering what is important to us and what not to do. Don't let yourself get caught up on the, I can be available 24 hours a day, for example, right? And I can just sit at my desk and keep on going, because we all know that our workload and the things that we can tend to is huge. But we have to make sure that we don't let that become everything, right? Because otherwise, as you said earlier, you're not bringing your best self to the table and not being the best leader that you can be. I also think that don't forget about your goals, right? You might have to adjust them and change your perspective again on how you're going to accomplish them, because maybe the groundwork has changed. But don't forget about what your goals are. Don't forget about what that long-term thing is. You might have to change the path and the methodology, but don't forget about your goals. I think that that's one of the most important things towards being productive and achieving the leadership success and excellence that we're talking about throughout this, is to make sure that you have those goals and that you're striving towards them.
Thank you, Lori.
I think one of the critical things not to do is don't start any new projects, no new products, no new lines of product line. Right now, focus on your core. Make sure that you've fortified that. We have all grown to learn that safety and security are a totally different concept now than they were a few months ago. So don't start new. Focus on your core and make sure that you're prepared. We are going to come out of this. We know that. We're going to come out of it differently than we were when we started it 6-8 months ago.
Judy, what's the, so I want to ask you a follow-up question to that, which is, some people may be in businesses where they can't stay in the core, right? They need to evolve maybe from a in-person to digital. So what would you say to those folks in the context of productivity and goal setting?
I actually feel like you're not, we were in person, right? But we've always in our generations been digital in one way, shape, or another. From social media to email, we've always been there. It's a question of using that now as your core and improving your level of communication with those different resources. In any given day, I can talk to 18 different clients all over the country. Prime Point is represented in 50 states across the union. I can talk to anybody at any time on their time zone. I don't have to go to them anymore. We're seeing, major leaps and bounds made with conferences just like this. We're virtual. This is cutting edge. It's going to be the new norm. I don't have to leave my confines. I'm still focusing on my core, but I'm growing that piece that's in there to be the new norm for my business.
I think something to realize is that we've all picked up time, right? So we could actually be increasing our productivity, not driving different places, flying across the country, doing the different things that we used to spend time getting from one place to the other, is that we have extra time. And while we talked earlier about using some of that time for personal things that maybe we didn't have time to do before, instead of commuting, riding your bike or working out or doing something like that, meditating, doing things that are good and healthy uses of those time. But it also gives us more time to focus, I think, than we had before. So in some ways, it can add to our productivity. And I think if we stay focused on that, we can get some benefits from it as well.
Yeah, I can't emphasize enough, and I think this is part and parcel of what Judy was mentioning, but I just think that prioritization is so important. I've had this interesting experience over the last 12 months when I left Celgene, and we were acquired by Bristol, and going from a relatively speaking small organization to a very large organization. And you know, when you have less resources, you're sort of naturally forced to prioritize. And one of the things I focused on as I joined the bigger organization was to try to bring that bit of a mindset of a smaller company where even though we have more resources, we're really rigorously going to prioritize. And I just think that is so important, particularly in the external environment that my team and my extended team operates in, where, you know, things are constantly shifting and changing. It's not that you set your priorities and you just stick to those for 12 months. That's certainly not the case. You constantly have to recalibrate and reprioritize, but the exercise of saying what is most important, I just think is so critical. You can't be in a world where you're not differentiating. So, you know, there's what's urgent and there's what's important. And some things are both, some things are one but not the other. And so constantly saying, okay, what is most important that I'm doing right now, I just really think helps with your own productivity and frankly feeling like you've actually accomplished something, as opposed to just doing things all day but not really feeling like you've accomplished something and worked towards a really productive outcome.
Thank you, Lisa. And I agree. And, you know, there's a method that I use, right, to do that, to prioritize, and it helps me with my mental well-being as well as with my productivity and my goal setting, which is I talk about with my clients when I'm coaching them. I always say to them, whenever they bring up something that they're feeling overwhelmed about or anxious about, I always ask them, you know, imagine two circles. The one circle is what's important, what matters. And the other circle is what can I control? What can I control? And if you imagine these two circles coming together and intersecting, that middle intersection where the two circles collide, that's what's most important and what you can control. And when you focus on that, you feel empowered. When you're looking at what's important, but it's stuff that you can control, it will drive you bananas and it will drive you into a spiral and to go into rabbit holes. So it's always, for me, it's very helpful when I think of those two circles and I go, what's important? What can I control? Mush them together. I'm going to focus on the intersection of those two. And it does help me, even in my business, to prioritize. It helps me to stay focused on what's going to bring me the results that I want. And I love that we're talking about setting goals, because the assumption is that we have goals, right? So if you are listening to this panel and you don't have goals for yourself, this is an invitation to begin to set goals for yourself. And of course, let's be flexible. I think part of being productive and setting goals is we need to have flexibility and curiosity. Sometimes when things don't happen the way that we want them to happen, there's a reason for that. So instead of, again, spiraling into why me, why is this happening? Why is the pandemic happening? Let's get curious to think about, what can be good about this? What can I learn from this? What can I do to grow from this experience? And then that generates perhaps a new set of goals, or maybe helps you pivot your goals to be more realistic. But throw away that script and let's face what's in front of us with flexibility and curiosity. And it really shifts how we feel inside, and then the results that we create in our business and in our careers. All right, so wow, we're making great progress. We're going to move on to our next category, which is creative thinking and continuous improvement. And the question that we created for the panel here is, what can we do to develop an edge in our business and in our career during this crazy time that we are in? In other words, whether in your business or in your life or in your career, how can you build that unique edge so you can stand out, so you can have that competitive advantage in your business, within your field, whatever the case may be. So what would you ladies say?
So I think that you really have to set an example for your team members and always be open, right? So I think that you succeed and accomplish a lot more when it really is a team effort with some good leadership, right? So how do you do that? I think that part of it is being open to ideas, suggestions, and also to illustrate to everybody around you that you are open to those ideas and suggestions, and that you are accepting of them, and that you're kind of fostering the creativity and the ideas and pulling together as a team, right? I think it's like good fuels good. I think that as people feel a part of something, whether you're in a tiny organization or a large organization, if you're doing these things effectively and making people feel a part of it, they're empowered. And once they're empowered to contribute, it's a phenomenal team effort. So I think as a leader, one of the most important things to creating that edge is to engage the people around you and to let them feel that you are open and excited by their ideas and willing to support them in those ideas and help them to accomplish that, and therefore it will help everybody.
Thank you, Lori. And as a follow-up, what happens when, as a leader, if you're listening to this and you're like, but I have so much to do, I have to deliver results. How can I be doing all this connection and all this, reaching out to people? What would you say to them, Lori?
I think that, as you said earlier, you need to prioritize, right? So part of that is letting them know that you support them, that you're open to their ideas, and giving them the bandwidth and the support that they need in order to maybe rise and become the leader of that particular item, whatever it is, whether it's an initiative, a task, a suggestion, because it's not just thinking of it, it's also implementing it that becomes important, right? So I think that, yes, there's only so many pieces we can each cut ourselves in. And sometimes by being busy, effective leaders, people might think, oh, I'm not going to go to her with that because she's so busy and she has no time. So letting them know that you're open to that, even if it means that they get delegated to accomplish it, I think is a really, really important thing.
Thanks, Lori.
I think part of setting an example too, when we think about sort of continuous learning and curiosity, I think your team has to see that you are intellectually curious and that you don't believe that you have all the answers, right? That you're constantly striving to learn more. You are constantly pushing yourself outside your comfort zone. You want to take on new challenges because and you are vulnerable when you don't know something. I'm a big fan of saying, I don't know, but let's go get the answer. And I just think as part of setting an example, you have to demonstrate to them that you're not so focused on your day job and what's in front of you that you're not open to learning new things or that you're not trying to learn new things. Just think the number one trait I look for in hiring people is intellectual curiosity. I just believe it to be such an important trait, and as leaders, we have to demonstrate that to our teams.
Yeah, that's a great point.
Role modeling, right, for them?
Absolutely.
Thank you. Judy? Did Judy freeze?
Oh,
Maybe frozen. I think Judy may be frozen. So let me go while we see if Judy freezes. Hopefully it's only on our call. So for me, and thank you for bringing that in, both you, Lori and Lisa, because to me that speaks to having a growth mindset, right?
Yeah.
And having that growth mindset is where you do part of what I already discussed, which is you look at situations and you look for ways to learn from that situation. You also look to develop yourself and develop your team. And I know I've been around for 30 years in industry, and most of us have been around. And what I have learned is that throughout every phase of my career, and even now in my business, which I've been running for 4 years, I have been continuously learning. And that is the continuous improvement, right? From when I started my career as a leader at the age of 1997, when I got my first systems manager role at Prudential, to all the way to today, right? Running my business as a CEO and founder. I remember when I started, one of the things I did was I joined Toastmasters. Because as a leader, communication, you talk about creative thinking and improvement, communication is the foundation for everything. And if you become a powerful communicator with your team, and then you are able to take opportunities to be in panels like this, raise your hand, volunteer, all of those opportunities are going to stretch you and are going to help you gain leadership skills that will be essential for anything that you do personally or professionally. So that continuous learning and self-development is something that I invite everybody. By the way, if you're here, most likely you're already on that wagon and on that journey. So I'm simply reminding you to continue to do that because it's going to take you to the next level over and over, no matter where you are in what stage of your life or career. So that's what I would say about this question of what can we do to develop an edge in our businesses and career. And by the way, if you have questions as you listen to us, please post them and we are going to address your questions in the chat. So we have about 10 minutes before we go into questions. So we can, we do have time to banter a little bit more amongst ourselves, and we'll wait for Judy to come back to us while she's having technology issues. So let's move on to the last topic, and this is where we can really share our insights, tools, and takeaways, messages that we want to give to the audience who devoted this 1 hour to be here with us. So the question that I want to ask you is, what are some useful tools that you can use and that you recommend to others that help you to stay productive, organized, and effective? What would those be?
Yeah, so I talked a little bit already, Ginny, about sort of this notion of you prioritize, you set goals, and then you recalibrate. And for me, and I really learned this tool as we were going through the acquisition and we were in a period of uncertainty for 12 months, the notion of asking yourself, what activities do you need to start, stop, and continue? And so what are the things I'm doing that are working that I need to continue? What are the things I need to start doing? Those could be habits, like we talked about earlier, things that you need to do for your own personal well-being, or those could be things you need to start doing for your team because you're in a new environment. And then what do you need to stop doing is really a question about, it's an exercise in what is taking mental energy of mine that isn't important, that isn't urgent, that doesn't sort of meet those criteria. So what do I need to start, stop, and continue? It really, and frankly, writing it down rather than just going through the mental exercise really helps me to say, am I spending my time in the right way? Have I recalibrated to my new environment? And I think doing that at least once a quarter is really, really valuable to just sort of reset yourself.
I love that. And I've used that exercise, by the way. I've used that tool of start, stop, and continue. And I actually have that tool in my Fearless Women at Work book because I love it and I actually use it. It's something that I normally do at the beginning of the year to say, what am I going to start doing this year? What I'm going to stop doing? And what am I going to continue doing because it works? So everybody write that down, the start, stop, continue tool, and Lisa's recommending that you use it on a quarterly basis. I use it on an annual basis, and quite frankly, throughout the year as well, based on what is happening. So this would be a great time to use that tool. During the pandemic, what should I start doing? What should I stop doing? And what should I continue doing? And I just want to drop a reminder for everyone. So far, we have 0 questions in the chat. So we are keeping our eye on you. And please put questions in the chat so that we can answer your questions. If you come to this presentation and you sit through it for an hour with us and you don't have any questions, that means you may walk away, right, with some doubt about what was said. Maybe you had a specific question that we didn't address. So this is your invitation to write in the chat any questions that you have throughout our discussion, okay? All right, so we want to go to Lori to talk about the tools, and then we'll go to Judy.
Right, so this kind of goes along with the start, stop, continue. And I just want to talk a little bit about change and the uncertainty and what that does to us and to our actions, right? So if you think about it in terms of the pandemic, at the beginning of the pandemic, we all thought, well, this was going to be maybe a few weeks. You know, schools said, okay, 2 weeks at home, then it'll be spring break, and by the end of that, we'll all be back. And now that we know that that wasn't really the reality, even along the way, we started to think, okay, maybe 3 months. And it's kind of hard to act when you don't know what that is that's ahead. So one of the things I think that's really important is to kind of think in the immediate, in the short run, and in the long run. And in everything that you do in terms of your effective processes that you have, it's kind of got to look at what's right in front of you, what's around the corner, and what's down the line. And that's the longer path that we may be adjusting along the way. So I think that it's really important to look at things that way and to process them that way. I think it helps with time management. I think it helps with communication. And I think it helps with setting expectations. And at the end of the day, this all really feeds into that so that you're effectively managing the expectations of the people around you and your expectations of yourself.
Thank you, Lori. And just to expand on what you're saying and unpack it a little bit more, immediate, obviously, it's like right now, I need to do something immediately. What do you have in mind in terms of the time period for short term and long term?
So that's interesting, and I think it could be different for everybody, whether it's a monthly goal, a weekly goal, a daily goal. I think everybody has a different time frame as far as that goes. But I think it's also about setting those goals and timeframes for the people around you, right? And how to help them to manage the uncertainty and the change and the expectations, right? I think if you engage them in setting those expectations for the immediate, the short term, and the long term, I think that that is something that's really important and effective in a leader.
Thank you, Lori. And Judy, welcome back.
Thanks. Talk about continuous improvement.
Yes.
I want to tie two pieces together. Unfortunately, I did get cut off. One of the things that we've talked about with creative thinking and continuous improvement is getting stuck in the weeds. You know, we get into patterns, and those patterns are like the furniture in your house. You know where everything is, you will not stub your toe on it. And it's not until you kind of push yourself outside of the pattern and the furniture that, you know, now you start to see other things that you weren't looking at before that could be great opportunities. You know, we talked about what not to do as a business, and I said, don't start anything new. But there are things that you could that aren't really new. You just haven't been paying attention to them. The opportunity is there to jumpstart your own creativity. There's a wonderful book called Thinking for a Change that gives you an insight into your style of thinking. Some thinkers are very linear. Some thinkers are horizontal. Some thinkers are like an amoeba. You know, you get an idea, and then you got another attachment, you got another attachment, and all of a sudden you've got this whole page of great ideas, and you've got to share those. In looking at, you know, the effective process and these tools, right now at this very moment, you are surrounded by a million thoughts, concepts, and bright ideas. I have already said it earlier today to some folks that this is a cutting edge event. Who thought we could do all this remotely and do it as well as we can until your computer goes out and, you know, then you have other issues. But, you know, being able to take advantage of that right now, you know, go to the networking, talk to the folks, you know, all of your networks are tremendous resources for you. When we look at, you know, the goal setting with your tools, one of the takeaways that we have for you today is a framework on setting up your goals and thinking. And this goes to each of my colleagues' pieces on, you know, setting a goal or using empathy. It's about, you know, identifying like it's first aid right now. You know, you've got to look at what's urgent. Okay, in first aid, that'd be breathing, right? We've got to breathe to live. What does your company need to do in order to live? And then there's, you know, becoming urgent. That's bleeding. You know, it's a bad thing. We know it's a bad thing, but do I need to do it today? So, you know, you've got the chance to start to set your priorities, and talking about Lori with the setting your short and long-term goals, this kind of grid helps you to lay that out. You know, I am a big advocate for put it on paper, because, you know, the pen to the paper has more creativity than when you're typing sometimes. You think differently, your engine's moving in a different direction. This is a moment where you can get lots of support and help and takeaways from a couple days of a conference that are wide open to any of your futures. We know that, you know, the folks that come to these conferences, there's big futures ahead for all of us.
Thank you, Judy. Way to catch up.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Get some good questions.
We do. And before we go into the questions, I just want to make one comment around the tools and takeaways. I am a big fan of Tony Robbins. I studied with Dean Graziosi. I studied with Fabian Fredrickson. I have a whole bunch of mentors that I follow. And one of the tools that has helped me so much is what I call this momentum tool. During this time, when it comes to goal setting, when it comes to getting next level results, to get next level results will require next level thinking and next level actions. And that's why I talk about let's get really intentional about what is it that we want to accomplish, what is that compelling future that we have. And then here's what I use in terms of a tool to give me momentum. So I always start with the belief that I have potential. If I don't have that belief, nothing will happen. I won't take a step to do anything, right? So I have potential is this belief that has driven me to do everything that I've done in my career for 30 years in corporate, with over 26 years in corporate and 4 years running my business. The belief drives actions, and actions drive results. And the results that you get will then also drive your belief again, right? So one thing, it's like this vicious cycle. I believe I have potential. I take action. That action will give me results. Those results may not be what I want. So rather than going, I'm done, because I have a growth mindset, I say, what can I learn from this? And go back to my potential, take actions and results until you get the results that you want. So that momentum that you generate by questioning your beliefs, if you're having trouble achieving your goals, I guarantee you that it's all founded in the beliefs that you have. So ask yourself, what are my beliefs around this area that I'm struggling to move forward in my life? Write them down, like Judy said. What are those beliefs? Do I believe I'm not smart enough? I'm not good enough? Right? I'm too old, I'm too young. Whatever those beliefs may be, they're driving the actions that you're taking. The minute you start to take next level action, you will start to see next level results. And those results will then enforce your belief again, and you will take more action. And that's how you generate the life that you want, and the career that you want, and the business that you want. And get that fuel, and that courage comes from building that muscle and having faith. And faith is a tool that I use every single day, right? My own faith. I'm not religious, I'm spiritual. Whatever that source of strength is for you, lean on that every day. Okay, so that's my answer to the question around tools and takeaways. So we have one question so far. Okay.
A bunch.
Yeah, there's a few in there.
All right, so let's go into them. Let's see. I'm going to scroll up. Yep, I see them. Oh, all right. So we're 33 minutes in, so we have a good 12 minutes to answer questions. So the first question that I see is, let's see. What is your Fearless Woman book is the first one. So if you go to Amazon, you will find the Fearless Women at Work book that I wrote back in 2017. It's an amazing book with 5 strategies that will help you improve your career and life. And so I invite you to go and check it out. And if you like it, only if you like it, leave me a review. If you don't like it, you don't have to. I'm just kidding. All right, so the next question is, do you have any books that you would suggest as a resource for professional women? So my book is one of them, and there's several ones. For example, one of my favorites is Lean In. I know this is controversial, but I understand where she was coming from. So I like Lean In by Sheryl Sandberg. I also like Own It by Sally Krawcheck. Those are two of my favorite books. So I let everybody else answer that question as well. Which books do you suggest as a resource for professional women? Any other books come to mind?
Ginny, I
There's
think you're
100. That's the problem.
Say that again.
You're the expert in that.
Yeah. So yeah, those are some of my favorite books. I mean, if you look back, I have so many of them. Those are two that I would definitely recommend. And I also have, the Surrender Experiment is one that I recommend to anyone who wants to go inward and check themselves, just grow spiritually. I think the Surrender Experiment is a great book.
We can post some also, and then you guys can download it, because I'm not in my office with all my books.
Yes.
I'm not good at remembering all the names, so
yes.
we can send them.
Yeah, the Wolf Pack is also a great one. The Wolf Pack is a really good one. And I recommend everybody who's listening to get the audio or the paperback of Emotional Intelligence 2.0. All right, that is something that everybody should be striving to grow. Their emotional intelligence has 4 components, which is self-awareness, self-management, social awareness, and relationship management. The more that we, and Lisa mentioned this before, right? As leaders, we have to have really high emotional intelligence and a high EQ. And many people have a high IQ, but not so much of an EQ. So let's continue down, because we have quite a few questions and I want to make sure that we get to them.
Yeah, I think we actually have only like 3 or 4 minutes left, so.
It's 35, I have 35 minutes. Oh, okay. What special measures have you taken to assist your team or employees to effectively managing during the pandemic time? What special measures have you taken?
So as an organization, we've made sure that everybody has what they need to work effectively remotely, physically, in terms of equipment and things like that. We also have been scheduling some huddles on a regular basis, whether it's with an immediate team that you work with or a physical team, an office team. We've been having happy hours on Fridays at 4 o'clock or whatever time works for everybody, as a way to connect outside of like the normal stuff, just the people stuff, paying attention to that as well as to the work opportunities. I think that those things are all important. I think that, sometimes just seeing somebody with their child wandering in, and the things that really happen in everyday life helps people to relate to one another more effectively, especially when that's not their reality.
Thank you so much, Lori. And probably one last question is, how do you confidently be a leader who strives for excellence with team members who manage areas where you are not the expert?
Yeah, I have a lot of experience with this. I manage a team of 5 folks, many of whom are expert in areas that I'm not, and I have expertise in other areas that they don't. And what I would say about that is that, first of all, empowering your team is really important. Acknowledging that they're the expert is really important, but also you have a role to play as the person who is not the closest to the issue, right? So in those situations, I think of myself as the steward of the big picture, if you will, right? Mm-hmm. The person who is the expert is the person who's closest to the subject matter. That comes with its ups and downs, right? And so you as the leader you're the person responsible for the big picture and for framing an issue and for making sure people have the entire context. And so you just simply don't always have to be the expert to be adding value to the conversation. And I think acknowledging that and understanding what role do you play versus what role does the expert play can be really helpful. And then how you think about navigating those conversations, and always giving your team kudos for being the experts in those issue areas.
I think it's important to know that there's all different skill sets, right? So sometimes it's technical and sometimes it's people skills. So you could still lead and manage somebody and be helping them and mentoring them in other areas that aren't technical. And one of the ways you might do that is by letting them know that you're reliant on them for those technical skills that you may not have. It's all part of pulling it all together as the leader.
Wow, we can go on for hours, I am sure, but we are at time. So I want to thank all of you, Lori, Lisa, Judy. Thank you so much for joining us today. We look forward to seeing you again. And Judy, if you want to leave with a few words, I just want to tell the audience that thank you for asking all these questions, and we will get the questions and we can provide answers to them behind the scenes, and we can maybe distribute them to you. I also created a resources page that goes to a lot of the questions around resources. It's at executivebound.com/NJBIA, and it's resources around books and TED Talks, and also profiles of the Myers-Briggs or DISC that you can take for free. And that should help you definitely in your career and in your business. Judy, any last words?
No, I think it's been a wonderful event. I'm very excited to have been here. Thanks.
Thank you, everybody, and we'll see you soon.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.